Here to respond, Dana Loesch, nationally syndicated radio show host and Second Amendment rights advocate. Terrible closing arguments by the prosecution. One of the most alarming things I've ever seen, Dana, when the prosecutor Binger, this slug, actually holds the AR-15 up, finger on the trigger, and then just points it at the jury. After the Alec Baldwin situation, could you believe he would point a gun at the jury like that?
After some of the arguments, Jesse, that I've heard from what I'm calling Brennan and Dale of the Step Brothers law firm, I believe it. I mean, it's insane. I mean, he flags the entire courtroom and jury. And to be honest, I'm actually kind of surprised that a bailiff, or I don't know if they had a state trooper in the courtroom, didn't intervene at that moment. Finger on the trigger, didn't even have it shouldered properly. He went to the Alec Baldwin School of Firearms Handling, apparently. But to that point, there was something else, Jesse, in the closing arguments that were interesting to me. Krause, or AKA Dale Doback, I was listening to him say, oh, no, there's no such thing as right or left-handed firearms. Well, actually, yeah, there is. And I was really shocked to hear a prosecutor say that in a courtroom setting as though it had any kind of factual weight. I mean, anyone who's ever shot, if you're right-handed, you shot with maybe a left-handed shotgun or vice versa, you know how your weapons control or how brass is spent. That was also insane to me. But this is self-defense on trial, and you have a clown show of a trial that should not even progress to this point, because I 1,000% agree with you, Jesse, and I thought you made some phenomenal points earlier on the 5. This was a clear-cut case of self-defense. End of story. And so the state is trying to plant the seed of reasonable doubt. That's all they're trying to do, is just make it look like he was somehow reckless. Well, he demonstrated better firearms discipline than either of those two clown shows in the courtroom today.
Yeah, so you have a 30-year-old convicted felon, rapist of boys, charging you at full speed after gunshots have just been heard. He's threatened your life. He's screamed F you, and he lunges for your weapon. That's just one. And then you have another guy hitting you in the head with a skateboard. You're tripped. You're falling down on the ground. Some other guy kicks you in the face. And another guy points a loaded Glock at your skull. And I honestly watched this video in slow motion today. You're looking at it right here on the screen. In a sense, Kyle showed amazing self-restraint in that situation. And that should be applauded. But they want to make this guy out to be an active shooter, Dana. That's what was the big line this afternoon. Active shooter.
Which, yeah, that's actually incredibly offensive, as it's a diminishment of mass casualty incidents. And there's a huge difference between someone who's obviously going out to carry out a mass casualty incident and someone who's forced to defend himself and doesn't even actually bear and present his firearm in that manner until he's knocked to the ground. The video is completely clear. And the discernment that he showed when Gage Groskowitz was approaching with his Glock extended. You know, in some states, low ready and then full presentation, I mean, you're talking about the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony. And I thought Rittenhouse, I mean, he realized when the threat was advancing, when the threat wasn't advancing, and then when Groskowitz chose to, as we like to, you know, FAFO, go after somebody that was on the ground and who was also armed and had better training. I mean, look, everyone talks about Jesse Kyle being out there with a firearm, but what about the grown men who were carrying illegally, one of which was a prohibited possessor? What about these guys who were out there armed and just brandishing firearms and hunting down people as they were burning down black-owned businesses, which is another quick point, Jesse. Everyone talks about race, but all I saw was a white convicted pedophile who got out of a mental institution, decided to go to a riot and help burn down black-owned businesses. Another white domestic abuser, his charges included strangulation and kidnapping, and another white criminal who was illegally carrying a firearm. White, and white, all with Antifa, burning down black-owned businesses. So if people want to have a discussion about race, there you go.
It's really well said, Dana. And that's how the press is going to prime this thing. They're already priming it for riots. And that's why they have the National Guard out there. As we said at the top, the jury's going to start deliberating first thing tomorrow morning. Right. But I mean, if you have a white guy that shot two white guys, a third white guy was wounded in an all-white city with a Democrat governor, Democrat mayor, Democrat DA, the press is going to want to make this about race. And as you saw today, they checked this kid's phone. This kid's 17, nothing about race, nothing about militia, nothing about white supremacy. There's nothing there.
Exactly. Nothing there at all whatsoever. And they are absolutely incorrectly making this about race when really it's about self-defense on trial. And one more quick point, if I may, Jesse, when the state was arguing in their closing arguments, and they actually said that because Rosenbaum, I guess, didn't bring a firearm to a fight, it was unfair for him. Well, you don't go around looking for trouble, and you don't have to meet that consequence. But here's the thing. He said, why couldn't Kyle Rittenhouse just fight him with his fist? Let's keep in mind that the exact type of rifle that Kyle Rittenhouse was carrying that evening is actually the firearm that is involved in the least homicides. FBI crime reports, UCRs that you can find 2015 to 2019, that's the last year available, shows that hand, feet, and fists are double the amount used in homicides and homicide cases than long rifles like Kyle Rittenhouse's. So I thought that was an interesting point that the prosecutor just inadvertently, accidentally walked into.
Well,
because
it's just
they're so
another one
clueless.
of those narratives that are just blowing up in their face. Dana Loesch, thank you so much for joining us on Primetime.
Always good to see you.